dưới này an toàn. Ở dưới này nó dành cho mình đó.
Vậy hả?
Dạ, nó chỉ đàng hoàng mà.
Nó không có biển đâu.
Ở trên kia là cho khách không thôi. Hôm nay không mang theo mấy máy quay. Quay bằng phone, không biết làm sao, tại vì đó là mấy cái chỗ nào mà quen đó thì mình mới mang theo máy.
Mấy cái này là mang cho những nó tiện.
Ồ, cái phone nó rõ quá ha. Cái này cái phone này chắc là phone máy. Giống như tôi rồi. Phone 4K nha. Hình ảnh này giống tôi.
Con này cũng là ok.
Hi guys.
To the podium, and you'll get the card that you need to open the gate. Now I'll go to the agenda this morning. The agenda contains a brief description of each item we consider. You can only take action on items appearing on the agenda unless there's some emergency, and that's a whole bunch of different procedures which we're not entertaining today. The agenda is divided into sections, and we have a different kind of agenda today. We don't have a consent calendar, which is unusual, because the only item on it was deleted. If you want to address the board, please complete a speaker press form, again located in the lobby outside the boardroom. Please bring the completed form so they can be put in the box next to the podium. Because of the large number of people coming in kind of late, we'd ask if you want to speak on any of the agenda items that you try to do so, and bring that slip forward as soon as you can. Generally speaking, speakers may address the board on up to 3 occasions. We have about 150 people wanting to speak today. For that reason, on the advice of County Council, the amount of time you'll have to speak is limited to 1 minute per occasion. So when you're called to speak, please step up to the podium. If you may, if you please state your name and city residence for the record. Please observe the light system. You'll turn to red when your minute is up. And so we ask that you observe those time limits, especially the large number of speakers that want to speak today, so that all who wish to speak have an opportunity to do so. So when addressing the board, please address the board as a whole with the chair. So if we may, and those who may have gone to our overflow area, you will be watching on the screen, but you may come over if you have a speaker request form when your name is called. We'll wait for you here. So at this point, I'm going to change the agenda a little bit. We're going to go directly to item 11, which is a public hearing on our budget. That's where most of the speakers have indicated they'd like to speak. And after we do that, judging from the interest, we'll go to item 10A, and we requested that be moved up as well. Then we'll go back to the beginning and work through the rest of the budget in order. So now we're going to move to the public hearing, which is item 11 of the budget. Madam Clerk, would you please lead the necessary reading of that item?
Item 11, under County Executive Office, hold public hearing to consider adoption of fiscal year 2026-27 recommended budget. Authorize County Executive Office and Chief Human Resources Officer to meet and confer with affected employee organizations concerning provision of employee benefits for part-time work and authorize the provision of employee benefits for part-time work for unrepresented employees to achieve salary savings. Mr. Chair, we have received 136 requests to speak on agenda item 11.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I think to make that more effective, we would like to hear from some opening remarks from staff, including an executive summary of the agenda item. And with that, then I'll open the public hearing for public comments. So staff, would you please proceed with some of the opening remarks and give us a executive summary of the item.
Thank you, Chair. So, obviously, Michelle Aguirre, County Executive Officer. First, I would like to thank our Chief Financial Officer, Kim Ingleby, our County Budget and Finance Office Director, Juana Cosma, and you'll see them up here next, right, for their presentations of the budget, and the entire County Budget and Finance Office team, plus the County Department budget teams, and our department heads for all of the work that they put into development of the 26-27 budget. It was a lot of work. Supervisors, as you know, I have been briefing you related to this budget for quite some time, for months. As a matter of fact, starting with the 2024 Strategic Financial Plan, 2025 Strategic Financial Plan, and over the last few months as we developed the budget. As you know, previous strategic financial plans, including the most recent one, identified a large gap between general fund expenditures and available revenues, resulting in the need for departments, including your offices, to cut 5% from their budgets for 26-27. Leading up to this, we implemented a hiring and expenditure freeze in January 2025, but the cost of doing business continues to outpace our revenue growth. And I don't have to remind you that Orange County receives the lowest share of property tax revenue in the state, only 5 cents of every dollar collected, so we are always at a disadvantage to start with. Since July 2024, we have deleted a net total of 425 vacant positions for cost savings. We've been able to avoid layoffs due to the hiring and expenditure freezes and the shifting of employees from unfunded to funded positions. And in order to avoid significant staffing impacts and reduction in services to the community, the 26-27 budget before you today includes the use of $75 million in one-time monies to balance the general fund. However, these monies will not be available to help balance the budget next year. So there is more work to do, including additional reductions to close that $75 million gap, which my team is already working on and which department heads were already made aware of. We continue to monitor the state and federal budgets and will return to your board during the mid-year budget report process to reconcile to the final state and federal budgets. While we in counties across the state have actively advocated for additional resources, there is no guarantee that those resources are coming from the state or federal government. So we must be prepared to make additional reductions, not only for the $75 million, but any impacts from state and federal actions. Simply put, we have exhausted all resources available to us, but we are resilient. We have demonstrated time and time again that we have the ability, through our detailed strategic financial plan and budget development processes, to make tough decisions to ensure the financial security of the county. Those tough decisions acknowledge that we cannot just draw monies from one-time reserves to cover ongoing operating costs. As Kim, Juana, Berta, Christine, and Lewis walk you through the budget today, you will see that we have no general fund requests for additional resources because there are none to be given. Any cost increase must be offset with a corresponding reduction in the budget. I want to thank the board and your teams for the significant amount of time that you have spent with me, Kim, Juana, over really what's been the last year and a half. having these conversations, making the tough decisions. It means a lot to me and the team. So, I will turn it over to Kim at this point.
Thank you. Kim Ingleby, Chief Financial Officer for the County of Orange. We are one county. Our mission is to make Orange County a safe, healthy, and fulfilling place to live, work, and play today and for generations to come. Our core values are excellence, leadership, stewardship, and innovation. Every program, every service provided by the county through our 22 departments support the county's mission and values. The challenge faced by the Budget and Finance Office is to ensure the current budget and recommended budget for next year and the upcoming years to follow allow the departments to do what they need to do while also staying within the limits of what we can afford. This requires a great deal of communication, collaboration, and trust. And we start with some guiding principles. These are our guiding principles, and not just for the budget process, but for every day as we work to resolve fiscal and budgetary problems that come up. It is not enough to have a balanced budget. We want it to be structurally balanced, meaning that our ongoing costs are funded or offset by ongoing revenues. This is fiscally responsible and ensures the core functions of the county. We also want to make sure that we are prepared should there be any one-time unexpected event, like a major unplanned capital expense or even a disaster. Thus, we ensure we maintain the recommended levels in our reserves. And I will emphasize that we only maintain up to the level recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association in our budget stabilization and catastrophic reserves. With infrastructure, in any and all financial situations, the budget must ensure that critical and essential infrastructure needs are being met. This is not only for our employees who work in our facilities, but also for the public who come to those facilities to receive services. Our buildings, our systems should be maintained. The county has goals, objectives, priorities to benefit the community and operate more efficiently, and that also factors into the budget process. And then finally, along with ensuring that we are attracting and retaining our talent pool, we also strive to do so to a point where individuals seek out employment opportunities with the county, where the county is the employer of choice. And following along with our theme of supporting and providing to the community. So with respect to the community, over the past few years, at the suggestion of the board, the Budget and Finance Office has made community feedback or input an intentional part of our budget process. On our website, we invite and respond to comments received year-round. We have participated in town halls. We have held in-person and virtual presentations on the budget and our 5-year strategic financial plan. And at the start of this budget process, with the strategic financial plan, we did a books and budget tour. We went to a county library in each of the 5 districts and shared the 2025 strategic financial plan. So in continuing our outreach efforts, earlier this year, a survey was conducted that was developed and summarized by our data analytics team. The survey was sent out to over 3,000 subscribers, linked on our webpage, and shared through social media. The survey asked the community to rank various programs and initiatives and allow it for open-ended comments. The high-level summary is shown here. We received 758 responses who ranked our top 3 county programs in order of importance to be community services, infrastructure and environmental resources, and public protection. And you will see later in our presentation that this aligns perfectly with the recommended budget for fiscal year 26-27. Before we get to the recommended budget, I want to touch on our year-round process. The strong collaborations across departments and how the recommended budget does not come to the board as a compilation of the budgets requested received. The departments know their business, and they have goals, objectives, and ideas for how to achieve, grow, and what they need to do to best serve the community. The Budget and Finance Office knows the demands placed upon the general fund and how limited our resources are. This slide highlights what is done throughout the year. I want to emphasize that there is constant communication with the departments where budgetary needs are identified, planned for, potential uses are shared and worked through, and this is done in working with the departments directly, as well as in various forums with their budget teams, their admin directors, and at the department head level. And because of the relationships made and the trust earned, when there are issues like what we are facing now with the budget challenges we had this year, I am proud to say that the recommended budget being presented is a result of this collaboration, and we all work together to make sure that this recommended budget would work for the departments and for the community. Here is our overarching budget balancing strategy for the county. The budget process is centered on the county's missions, values, and guiding principles, and incorporates the results from the community survey, focusing on our community, our commitment. The strategic financial plan is a planning tool, and it begins the budget process. With the strategic financial plan, we have an idea of what is needed by the county and its departments out 5 years, and also ensures we are addressing our minimum reserve requirements and core mandated services. From the strategic financial plan, as Michelle mentioned, a gap was identified between projected revenues and anticipated expenditures, where our budget instructions actually included a reduction of 10% for the departments in their net county cost or general fund allocation. Some departments were able to meet the 10%, but as we went through the budget balancing process, the reduction for the remaining departments was reduction of 5%, with no expansion to county programs or services that would require net county cost funding. And as a reminder, the recommended budget being presented today is based on the state's January proposed budget. The Budget and Finance Office, along with our ledge team, monitors both state and federal fiscal legislation throughout the year. For the budget process, any significant known impacts that come up are incorporated, and any additional impacts that come later, such as when the state adopts their budget next week, will be addressed through our normal budget reporting process, such as the mid-year or our year-end budget reports. There were no adjustments made as a result of the state's May revised budget. So here is the first glimpse of the fiscal year 26-27 recommended budget. And it's shown here at the program level and also includes the total number of positions. For each bar, the height of the bar represents the total appropriations. That's the budget. The dark blue area represents the amount of the budget that is funded by dedicated revenue. The green area represents the amount of net county cost funding allocated to that program. This is the county's general purpose revenue. This is our funding that is considered discretionary. The details for each program will be the focus of today's public budget hearings. This year to balance the budget, but we did it. And it took all of our available resources, including $75 million in one-time sources that, as mentioned, we will not have next year. And if you look back over the past 3 years, the amount of one-time sources used to balance the budget has increased from $15 million in fiscal year 23-24, $44 million in 24-25, $53 million in 25-26. This remains a concern and is why the county remains under the budget action plan that was put in place in January 2025. And also why the department's budgets include a 5% reduction in their net county cost funding. The financial issues facing the county are not just due to economic conditions. We are seeing growth in our revenues, but we are also seeing increases in our costs, especially with respect to IT equipment, insurance premiums, and the amount of settlements we have to pay outside of the 2024 airport fire. There also have been significant legislative actions that the county had to or has to implement with limited or no funding provided. This has put additional strains on the limited amount of general purpose revenue we have, which is allocated as seen here as net county cost. The fiscal year 26-27 budget is balanced. Any additional request for net county cost funding would require either new revenue or an equal reduction in net county cost provided elsewhere. And as you can see on this chart, the majority of the net county cost is allocated to public protection program because that is where most of the county mandates are. The small amount provided to community services is to provide the required match or maintenance of effort to meet the state or federal funding stipulations. The small amount provided to general government is to cover the costs associated with being an ongoing entity, the administrative functions, administrative costs. So to go deeper, let's look how the budget is funded at a more detailed level. So here is how the recommended budget is funded. So going left to right, we have state and federal funding, which make up about 31%, and funds received primarily pertain to the services and programs provided by the county on their behalf, such as homelessness, housing, healthcare. This funding includes realignment, public safety sales tax, also known as Prop 172, and Behavioral Health Services Act. Dedicated revenues at 42% come to the county through charges for services, fees, fines, penalties. They must be used for an identified purpose. There's also fund balance being used, shown here in yellow, and the green is the general purpose revenue, which is the county's discretionary funds allocated to departments as net county cost. So of the $10.5 billion in this budget, $9.2 billion is restricted for dedicated program expenditures. It is the $1.3 billion, the general purpose revenue, that is used to cover what the county is mandated to provide to meet the required match or maintenance of efforts, or to cover the cost associated with being, the administrative cost associated with being an ongoing entity. The recommended budget includes the known impacts resulting from the federal and state changes made to the safety net programs, specifically CalFresh and Medi-Cal, which is a $16 million increase in cost to the Social Services Agency with no funding provided. And additional impacts are anticipated with the increased workload to comply with the new eligibility requirements and the potential need to provide medical services to those who will no longer be covered by Medi-Cal, which has the potential to be fiscally devastating to the county. The county also continues to struggle with the increased demand for voter-approved Prop 36, which has significantly impacted workloads and need for resources for public safety departments and a healthcare agency with no funding provided. The state has provided limited one-time funding, but it is not certain nor enough. The county continues to face increased insurance costs, increased over 200% over the past 5 years, 12% in the current year alone, and less coverage is being provided. And there continues to be increases in settlement costs outside of the airport fire, which has drained our property and liability fund, requiring transfers this year of around $34 million from the general fund to make the required payments. For as much as we know what for the fiscal year 26-27 recommended budget, there still remains a lot unknown. And that is where our financial planning and our strong reserves become absolutely critical. The recommended budget is anticipated to result in reserve balances shown here at the end of fiscal year 26-27. The available amounts in the OSERS and TITA reserves were used as the one-time funding sources to balance this recommended budget. The county's reserve policies can be found in the county's strategic financial plan, which is consistently on the board agenda for the last meeting in December. The budget stabilization reserve target and the contingencies reserve target are maintained at the Government Finance Officers Association's recommended levels of 2 months of general fund operating revenues and 15% of the general purpose revenue amount, respectively. These funds are reserves and are to be used during unforeseen financial events to help the county get through or glide down following a significant fiscal issue, with the contingency reserve to be used for an event like a disaster to avoid the reliance on emergency borrowing or federal bailouts. With the Garden Grove hazardous materials incident last month, the county incurred over $3 million in costs over the period of about a week. We are seeking reimbursement for what is allowed, but the costs have been incurred and will be paid before that happens. And as we approach the end of the fiscal year, looking at our projections, we are also concerned that we may have to draw from these reserves in order to close the books. The County of Orange attracts investors, and we attract investors because the reserves are maintained at the GFOA level, because we have strong fiscal policies, because we prioritize structurally balanced budgets. Reaching the GFOA's recommended levels earned the county the highest rating of AAA. And maintaining our AAA rating is not just so that our borrowing costs are less because we're not heavy borrowers, but it's to attract investors should we need to borrow or have borrowings that we are associated with, to have options. Economic indicator of sound governance and fiscal resilience. Our reserves are important and an essential part of our long-term planning and strategies, and thus remain a top priority. Now that is the overview, so now I want to turn it over to Juana Cosma, who will now begin to provide the details of the fiscal year 26 budget.
Thank you, Kim. Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Juana Cosma. I am the county's Budget and Finance Director. Before I begin today, I would like to take a moment to express my appreciation to all of the departments and to my team for all their hard work and collaboration throughout this year's budget cycle, which has truly been like no other. Developing the budget requires considerable analysis, coordination, and commitment, and I want to acknowledge the significant efforts contributed by both the departments and the County Budget and Finance Office to build a budget that is both fiscally responsible and meets the needs of our community. A huge thank you to all. So last year, the County Budget and Finance Office received valuable feedback from your board offices, and in response, we redesigned the public budget hearing presentation. As a result, the presentation you will see today differs from the one in previous years. As part of our program's presentation, we will first provide an overview of the department, followed by a review of its budget. The recommended budget was released and posted on the county's website on Wednesday, May 20th, along with a new budget at a glance prepared for the public. As part of our ongoing commitment to public outreach, this year we introduced and hosted a budget open house on June 3rd. The event was highly successful, drawing the highest in-person attendance to date. This strong engagement reflects our community's continued interest in transparency and the county budget process. The recommended budget presented today is balanced and was compiled based on strong budget and fiscal policies, board priorities, and developed through extensive collaboration across departments. Each of the 196 budgets that comprise the county were analyzed based on their 5-year strategic financial plan, current year projections, pending or enacted legislation, and our county's third-party economic trend analysis. Per policy, departments develop and submit their budgets, maintaining their current levels of service, providing for mandated services, meeting required match and maintenance of effort amounts, and identifying the levels of appropriations needed. When the state and federal funding is decreased, the county policy is to not backfill, and departments either have to fund those programs with other revenues or scale the program to the funding provided. Departments may also need to expand their programs or services, and as a result may request additional resources such as positions, equipment, appropriations, and funding. For fiscal year 26-27, expansions were limited to those that were fully funded by outside sources and did not require ongoing net county cost. The recommended budget includes one expansion for 3 new positions for John Wayne Airport, which will be presented as part of their departmental budget. During today's presentation, I will provide an overview of the county's recommended budget, which was developed to maintain the current levels of service within the funding provided. Departments' budgets have been re-baselined, and we are challenging departments to stay within the CEO's recommended budget for 26-27. The budgets for each program will be presented in more detail, with Berta Tapia covering programs 1 and 4, which is our public protection and general government services, Christine Gardia for programs 2, 3, 5, and 7, which is our community services, infrastructure, capital projects, and miscellaneous, and Louis McClure covering program 6, debt service. We will pause for board discussion at the end of each program, and at the conclusion of today's program's presentation, I will return to take one straw vote for fiscal year 26-27 recommended budget. The total recommended budget is $10.5 billion, which is approximately $300 million less than our current year budget due to one-time transfer in fiscal year 25-26 related to the airport fire. I wanted to start today with this chart, which shows how the $10.5 billion budget is funded. Here, as shown in blue, 51% or $5.3 billion of the budget is funded by dedicated revenues. These revenue sources are outside of the general fund and are dedicated or restricted for a specific program, service, or purpose. These include our road funds, libraries, parks, John Wayne Airport, and the landfills. The other 49% pertains to the general fund, of which the majority of the general fund revenues at 37% or $3.9 billion, shown here in the orange area, are also considered to be restricted for specific purposes. These are primarily state and federal allocations or grants awarded or provided to general fund departments to carry out programs on behalf of the state and federal government. It is only the general purpose revenue, shown here in the green area, representing about 12% or $1.3 billion, that is considered discretionary. This is primarily property taxes and also includes interest and assessment and tax collection fees. This amount is allocated as net county cost to the various general fund departments based on the funding needed to provide mandated services or programs and for funding of county match or maintenance of effort as required by some state or federal allocations or grants.